Hey everybody, this is video 7 of 14 of exposing the worldwide trafficking ring and the occult. I want to talk to you guys today about false flag terrorism. I talked about earlier about programming. I'm going to actually probably make more videos today because I feel in the mood to make videos. So I hope you guys would share with me your thoughts, share with me any questions you have, any input that you have that you want to share. I hope you guys will. So I want to talk to you about false flag terrorism. False flag terrorism is when a person or an organization or a government commits a terrorist attack and they blame it on another source. They say that it's somebody who did it, that it was not involved. False flag terrorism is not what we hear about from people like Alex Jones, where things never happen. All these terrorist attacks have happened. They do happen. They continue to happen because of the occult trying to power up. They are not fake. They are very, very real. False flag terrorism is very, very real, but it's not who people say is doing the terrorist attack. For instance, and I talked about this the other day, 9/11 was really the biggest false flag terrorist attack that ever happened. It was to usher in a time of Islamophobia, which was supposed to distract the Muslims from their involvement in the intelligence community of trying to expose sex trafficking, the Illuminati, and the Luciferians. Guys, Islamophobia was based on hatred from the Luciferians who turned the whole world against the Muslims based on one terrorist attack that was planned by and initiated mostly by Americans and by the Rothschild banking system and banking family and by certain people in the Israeli government and certain people in the Saudi Arabian government. Islamophobia started to get bigger and bigger back in 9/11. People started to hate Muslims for one reason, and that one reason alone is because they were actually some of the biggest ICs involved, intelligence community. That's what IC stands for, if you don't know what that means. Intelligence community involved in investigating the Illuminati and the Luciferians. Their intelligence communities in the Middle East have been actively investigating the worldwide sex trafficking ring for years, and they've been put down and smeared, and they have had lies about them for years because of their involvement in exposing the worldwide trafficking ring. Now, I am not saying that Muslims all are innocent, because there are some people that work for the Illuminati, some people who were paid. The Saudi royal family are Blackwater agents, and they were actively involved in 9/11. There are some other people who were involved that were connected to Muslim, quote-unquote, terrorist organizations, quote-unquote. But those terrorist organizations were actually funded by and began by the CIA and by Blackwater. Al-Qaeda, and I can't remember which one's which, but Al-Qaeda and ISIS, one of them was funded by Blackwater, and one of them was funded by the CIA. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is stuff that I know personally. But I don't know if it was ISIS that was funded by Blackwater or if it was Al-Qaeda, and if it was Al-Qaeda that was funded by the CIA or if it was ISIS. I'm not sure. But one of the two was funded by ISIS, or ISIS was funded by one of them, and Al-Qaeda was funded by one of them. They are not Muslims, okay? There are some people that are hired state actors that are supposed to look Middle Eastern. The Saudi royal family is involved. There are some Middle Eastern people who are involved in it as well. But most of the people who are involved in Al-Qaeda and ISIS are actually not Muslims. They are actually state actors, and they actually work for the CIA and for Blackwater. Some of them are darker skinned because they're getting paid to be state actors, but they themselves are not actual Muslims. The only really big Muslim terrorist organization that's involved are the Saudi royal family. The Saudi royal family are Blackwater agents, and they're Luciferians. They're not even really Muslims. They're just Muslim in what they say publicly. They're Muslims, but they're not actually Muslims. False flag terrorism is an example. That was an example of false flag terrorism. False flag terrorism are organizations, people, or governments that pull off a terrorist attack or a shooting or an assassination or something like that, and they kill innocent people, and they blame it on the wrong side, or they blame it on someone that didn't do it. I want to share it with you guys today. Actually, I was talking to my best friend last night, and we were talking about some of this stuff, and she actually reminded me of something very interesting. An example of a false flag assassination was actually, remember that journalist back in 2000, I think it was 18, his name was Kaigasaki. I think that's how you pronounce his last name, I'm not sure, Kaigasaki or something. So we were starting to post way before it ever made in the news that he was tied to bin Salman. We were actually posting about that on social media because we have inside sources, because bin Salman, like I said, the Saudi royal family is horrible. They're very, very evil people. Bin Salman is a Blackwater agent, and he actually had Kaigasaki killed. So that's an example of a false flag assassination. Now, eventually it did make the news, I think, that, because I was reading this online. I don't remember this even being in the news, but I was reading online that they actually came out and said it was bin Salmin. But I knew from the very beginning, like literally the day after it happened, that it was bin Salmin because we have inside intelligence. So that was an example of a false flag assassination. Some false flag assassination attempts are actually staged. There's not an actual assassination attempt. It's staged for attention. There have been several of those in the last couple of years. There's several people who have done false flag terrorist attacks, false flag assassinations, and false flag shootings for attention. They're wanting attention from the Illuminati, wanting attention from Lucifer, the false gods, etc., etc. And there's some assassinations that have actually staged assassination attempts that have actually been done that weren't actually even real assassination attempts, but it's to get a focus off of what's going on around the world, and it's a distraction. So false flag terrorism exists on every level of society, of several different governments, of the American society, of South African society, and from the American government. So when I say society, I mean the government. So it's the American government, the South African government, the British government, parts of the Ecuadorian government, parts of the Russian government, and the Australian government. Those are the 5 countries that are most actively involved in false flag terrorism. Also, the 5 countries that are most actively run by the Luciferians and run by Blackwater and run by Black Eyes and run also by Illuminati members. Now, some are a little bit of both. Some are different organizations connected to that. Some are Illuminati, some are Blackwater, some are Black Hats, Black Eyes, and some are terrorists, and some of them are all of the above. So they kind of go hand in hand. So false flag terrorism is when a person is blaming one side of doing something that they didn't do, and they're actually blaming the other side to distract. Like I said, most of it has to do with blaming Muslims because of what Muslims know. If you guys saw, I don't know if you saw in the news a couple months before the Iranian war started, a couple weeks before, I'm not sure if it was a couple months or a couple weeks, but I think it was back in January. There was a huge protest in Iran, and they actually burned some pictures, and it said, I think it said death to Donald Trump, death to Jeffrey Epstein, and death to Bibi Netanyahu. And they were actually calling out the worldwide sex trafficking ring. They were actually calling out pedophilia. They've actually posted publicly, the Iranian government's actually posted publicly about the pedophilia ring in America. So the Iranian government's been going after the American government for the pedophilia ring for a long time. That's part of the problem, most of the problem. The American government has used state actors to cause problems between both governments. Iran has some state actors that are working for the Saudi royal family, who are actually, again, all Blackwater agents. They're all tied to Blackwater. They are not Muslims. They're not working for a holy war. They're not working for jihad. This is a state-run false flag terrorist attack, state-run assassins, and this is a state-run fake war. The war was started, by fake war, I don't mean that it's not going on. What I mean is that it was started to distract from the Epstein files. It was started to distract the Middle East from continuing their investigation into the Illuminati, because the intelligence communities in the Middle East have been actively looking into the occult for years, talking about going back, at least back to the 1960s, as far as I remember. It was 1960s, 1970s. Different intelligence communities in the Middle East were actively investigating the worldwide sex trafficking since at least the 1960s. And they came up with investigating the Illuminati. They wanted to expose the Illuminati. Muslims hate the Illuminati with a passion. A lot more than Christians do, because unfortunately a lot of Christians don't even realize that the Illuminati is real, or they have disinfo out about the Illuminati, or a lot of pastors are in bed with the Illuminati because they're taking money from Masons and from Eastern Stars, and they're preaching what the Masons and the Eastern Stars want them to preach. So we have to understand that this is a global conspiracy, and this is not a conspiracy theory. This is stuff that I'm sharing that I know firsthand, or that people that I work with in the intelligence communities told me, or people that I know personally have been involved. I know of somebody who was involved in helping to put the bombs at the World Trade Center. There were bombs at the World Trade Centers. And that's a whole topic for another day. That was an example of a big, fast, false flag terrorist attack. According to some reports that have been buried about 9/11, there was bombs found at the site. There was bomb debris, and there's a reason for that, because it was bombs that took down the Twin Towers. It was a false flag designated to be the biggest way that the cult could power up. Powering up means that these people in the Illuminati feel like if they kill people, innocent people, that they get power from Lucifer or false gods. So whether or not you believe in the supernatural, it doesn't matter. I'm just telling you what Luciferians believe. I personally believe in the supernatural. I've seen people in the occult, when they've ritualistically abused me and done stuff, I've seen this surge of power that's gone through them, through blood sacrifice and through sex sexual abuse. I've seen that. They get this extra power. Now, whether or not it's demonic or it's just something in their psyche, you know, that's totally something for another day to talk about. If you're someone who doesn't believe in the supernatural, I'm not going to get into that. I personally believe it is supernatural, but that's just me because I believe in the supernatural. I've seen the supernatural, but that's just me. If you're somebody who doesn't believe in the supernatural, just think about these people are demented and they think in their head that they're getting power from Lucifer and from false gods and that they're getting power when they murder people, when they sexually assault people. So false flag terrorism is usually designated to distract from a certain topic. For the last 10 years, we've been dealing with false flag terrorism, school shootings, etc., etc. Why? Because they were trying to power up, and secondary, they were also trying to distract from something. It usually has to do with the trafficking. The worldwide trafficking ring has been being investigated for over a decade. It's a massive investigation. Epstein was just one part of it. He's just one part of the worldwide trafficking ring, but there were so many people involved in it. And there's been so much pushback on the intelligence community because we have the white eyes and the light and the gray eyes in the intelligence community who are fighting for our behalf. And I've talked about this before. White eyes are people that are light and they are on our side trying to fight against the trafficking ring. They're intelligence community people. They're people who want to fight against the dark side. They're trying to bring down the Illuminati. They're trying to bring this down the sex traffickers. They're trying to bring down the people who do false flag terrorist attacks. They're trying to bring down parts of the cartel because the cartel is involved in drug running. The drug runners in the cartel are involved in trafficking and kidnapping children and trafficking and kidnapping unwilling adults. So they're trying to bring down the cartels. They're trying to bring down these worldwide institution of the sex trafficking ring, trying to take down the billionaires. So what white eyes are, gray eyes are doing the same thing, but they do it through kind of gray means they're willing, and I've talked about this before, gray eyes are willing to do things that they have to do to take care of these people. White eyes usually just arrest people or investigate them. Gray eyes are willing to do other things, such as torture or even killing a person if they have to. Whereas the white eyes will refuse to do torture and they refuse to do kidnapping, or not kidnapping. They refuse to do tortures and they refuse to kill people unless they absolutely have to as far as the killing goes. Like if they're in a situation where they have to rescue someone and they have to kill somebody, the white eyes refuse to do it unless they absolutely have to. But the gray eyes are a little bit more gray about that, but they're still on our side fighting for our behalf. But some of them are trained assassins, people at MI6, some people at the CIA that are working with the white eyes. They do things that are less than savory in the world's eyes, as far as bending the rules a little bit in order to rescue victims of sexual abuse, in order to stop terrorist attacks, in order to rescue victims that are being held hostage, in order to try to expose the worldwide trafficking ring. They do stuff that's a little bit more unsavory in the world's eyes. They will dabble in torture, they will kill people, things like that, but they're still on our side. The gray eyes are. Black eyes are the ones that do play on the false flags. Black eyes are people in the intelligence community who are working with the traffickers, or either traffickers themselves, they're working with the traffickers, or they are getting paid by the traffickers or by the terrorists. They're working with the terrorists or terrorists themselves, or they're working with getting paid by the terrorists. So these are the types of people we're dealing with. So when I say white eyes, I'm talking about the people that I work with. Gray eyes are people I work with. Black eyes are the people that are our enemies. They're the ones in the that are fighting to expose, try to bring us down, try to bring the white eyes, and try to bring IC adjacent people such as myself. I'm not IC. I work with the ICs closely. I'm IC adjacent. That's what you would consider me. So I work with the ICs, but I'm just an operative. I'm not being paid. I'm not on their payroll. I just do some work with them on the side. And I have a lot of friends that are in the intelligence community. So that's what false flags, that's what when we talk about white eyes, black eyes, and gray eyes, that's what we're talking about, just so you know, in case you never heard that term before. So the white eyes and the gray eyes are trying to stop the worldwide trafficking ring, and they're trying to stop the worldwide terrorist network. And the black eyes are trying to stop the white eyes, the gray eyes, and all of us that are victims that are wanting a chance to get our justice. So there's this war going on in the intelligence community worldwide, because there's some that are white eyes, some gray eyes on our side. And then there's the black eyes that are trying to cancel out and trying to stop what the white eyes have been fighting for the last 10 years. And a lot of times the black eyes get wind because they hack, and they have intelligence too, because a lot of them are intelligence community. They're just the bad side of the intelligence community. And they'll get information about when the white eyes are going to actually drop something or what they're planning to do. And they'll distract with the shooting or with a false flag terrorist attack. And this has happened so many times. So they do these false flags in order to distract, one, and then also in order to power up. They want to also cause chaos. There's a thing called chaos magic that those in the occult dabble in. And black eyes, are usually tied to the cult. Even if they're not in the occult themselves, they're usually tied to it. So chaos magic is what they believe that they're causing worldwide confusion, chaos, war, pandemics, these things that are all planned and all initiated by the Illuminati, all initiated by the Black Eyes, all initiated by Red Mossad, by the CIA, by the DOD, by people at Blackwater. Again, there's some good people in both the Mossad. There's some good people in the CIA. There's some good people in Blackwater. There's some good people in the DOD. But I'm talking about the Black Eye agents. I'm not talking about the good people. I'm talking about the Black Eye agents. So they're working together to try to distract and trying to start a worldwide chaos magic. So that's what this war is. It's chaos. It's a form of chaos magic. They're practicing chaos magic right now. They're trying to distract. They're desperate because the Epstein files get leaked. And then all of a sudden we're at war with Iran. Seems suspicious, don't you think? Especially when certain parties say that there was no actual intel. They just had feelings that there was going to be something happen. No, your feeling is I'm going to be exposed in the Epstein files and I have to cover up my crimes by committing war crimes. War crimes don't cover sex crimes. Sorry, buddy. It just doesn't. And I'm not just talking to one person. I'm talking to the whole worldwide sex trafficking ring. War crimes do not cover up sex crimes. There are people that are thousands and thousands of people that are protesting against both the war and the sex crimes that Epstein's co-conspirators did, wanting justice, wanting the truth to come out. And then we won't stop. We're not going to stop trying to expose this stuff. So the false flag terrorism, false flag wars, and false flag assassination attempts are usually orchestrated by Black Eyes in the intelligence community who work with MI5, Mossad, DOD, CIA, Blackwater, certain parts of the Israeli military. Bibi Netanyahu is Black Eyes. He's very, very evil, that man is. Certain parts of the Saudi Arabian military, the Saudi royal family is very evil. Certain parts of the rogue Russian government. Putin himself is not involved, but he has people that work underneath him that are involved in it. They also work with people in the Ecuadorian government, people in the Australian government, people in the British government, and people in South African government, but mostly it's the American government. False flag terrorism is planned by Blackwater, the CIA, the DOD, MI5, and Red Mossad are behind most of this. And Red Mossad, I talked about earlier, Red Mossad is a branch of the Mossad that's actually devoted to false flag terrorism. That's why they call them red, because it's bloodshed. It's in a specific designation that the intelligence community is given to certain parts of the Mossad. So these 5 organizations work together to try to cause chaos magic, to try to plan and initiate false flags. They work with the agents around the world, some of whom are agents, some are just operatives. And they're trying to cause a massive distraction, and they're trying to power up from their darkness. If they're in the occult, they believe in powering up through bloodshed. They think that they're going to power up from Lucifer's power. And they're trying to gain more power, more money, more fame in the occult side. And they're doing these things in order to power up, in order to distract, or in order to cause chaos magic around the world. These are all things that the Illuminati thrives on, but we've got to fight these things. There's proof of false flag terrorism. There's proof of who really was behind some of the biggest terrorist attacks, some of the biggest shootings over the years. There's proof. And then we also need to talk, when we're talking about false flag terrorism, we also need to talk about people who get their programming trip to do shootings, especially. Not so much false flag terrorism, but just the shootings, which can be false flags as well. We need to talk about people who get their assassin programming trip. And I talked earlier, if you watch my video from earlier, I actually talked earlier about the designations of programming. And one of the things I talked about was alpha programming and beta programming. And alpha programming is assassination programming that's put into people who are survivors of MKUltra. And beta programming are people who work underneath the alphas. They're usually being handled by alphas. So what happens is sometimes Illuminati handlers and Black Eye intelligence community handlers, military handlers will actually send trip codes, what are known as trip codes, to certain people on their phones. And they actually trip them to go out and do a shooting or to do a bombing or something. This is less rare with bombings. It's usually involved with shootings. 2 examples of false flags shootings that I want to tell you guys about is Aurora, Colorado, and the Pulse nightclub. The Pulse nightclub was initiated by several people in the current administration of Donald Trump's administration and in the current government, Congress and Senate. There are people that were involved that planned that shooting. It was not who they said they did. Once again, it was a false flag. This shooting was planned and initiated to power up, and it tripped several people who were actually gray eyes, who were not willingly dark. They were not on the dark side. They were actually trying to expose the Illuminati. They tripped their programming. They sent them trip codes, and they went into an alternate state of being, which is what I was talking about earlier about how some people who have MK Ultra split into other fragmented parts and they actually switch personalities. Their personalities get tripped. There's trip codes that they can do that they're programmed into during the trauma, during the abuse, during the things that they go through with their own programming. The programming gets tripped. The alpha programming and the beta programming gets tripped. They end up going to places, shooting people, killing people. Sometimes they don't even remember it. Some people, if you look in their eyes when they do a mass shooting, they look glazed over, they look confused, they look absolutely dead inside. One example of that is the Aurora, Colorado shooting. He was a survivor of MK Ultra. They tripped his programming. He got blacked out. He did all that shooting because he was a survivor. He got his programming tripped by his handlers. That's why in a lot of these pictures of mass shootings, if you see them, and it's not because they have mental illness, although that could be comorbid, because a lot of people who are survivors of abuse, especially at the hands of the CIA and MK Ultra and targeted ritualistic abuse, a lot of survivors do have comorbid mental illnesses going on. So there could be schizophrenia going on. There could be things with their PTSD from the trauma. It could be split. They could be having borderline personality. Very common that some of the people who have alpha programming actually have programming to become schizophrenic and to become bipolar, and to become borderline personality disorder. And that's actually a programming. It's not actually an actual mental illness. And I'm not going to get into that because I don't really understand the logistics of it, but I've been told that by several people who used to be CIA handlers who got saved, that there's actually a kind of programming where you can actually manipulate a person's mind, utilizing different kinds of technology and demonic attack, where you can actually utilize and you can actually drive someone so crazy and you actually make them become schizophrenic, or you make them become borderline personality, or you make them to become bipolar. And it's comorbid with the MK Ultra. And I actually was told that once. And I don't know what the logistics of that looks like. I'm not an MK Ultra programmer. I'm not a CIA handler. I'm a victim. So I don't understand that's the level of the programming. I wish I could have you guys talk someday to one of the ex-programmers, because they would understand and explain things a lot more. Maybe someday one of the programmers will let you guys talk, because maybe someday I can get one of the programmers to talk to you guys, an ex-programmer, to explain logistics of some of the programming, because I don't understand all the programming. But all I do know is that these shooters and these false flag people, they're either doing it because they're tripped. They get trip codes sent to them on their phone or on their computer or through lights. They get programmed with certain trip codes when they have alpha programming, where they can even be tripped with Morse code lights. I have actually seen, and I've actually been a witness of this, where people have actually been tripped by certain lights flashing a certain way because it's Morse code. It was triggered by a handler. But on the other hand, you can also de-trip survivors using Morse code, because they're programmed in their mind, just like a computer, to respond to certain sounds, to respond to certain words, to respond to certain Morse code lights, Morse code sounds, etc. But they're also, so they could be tripped with that, or they could be de-tripped with that. And I've seen it happen both ways. And I've even had times where I've gotten tripped. Now, I don't have assassin programming, but I had some Ruby programming, and some suicide programming. And I even saw that there were times when people would do lights to trip me, and they trip me. So I know what it's like to be tripped. Not assassin programming, because I'm not an assassin, but I can understand how hard it is for people who have assassin programming. So they keep tripping people with the lights. They trip people to commit a shooting. I had a friend who was flipping. He was a Christian. He gave his life to the Lord. We led him to the Lord, and our ministry led him to the Lord. And then he was actually a Blackwater agent. He got led to the Lord. Well, a week and a half later, or maybe a month later, I don't know. I think it was a week and a half later, but the time might be a little bit off. But I think it was about a week or a half or 2 weeks later, they send him a bunch of trip codes. He gets his assassin programming tripped, and he goes to England, and he puts some bombs on the subway. And this was back in, I think it was a subway, if I remember correctly. Yeah, I think it was a subway, unless I'm getting the story misconstrued. But anyhow, he did something in England, and it wasn't like the Manchester bombing or anything. It was a small thing. It was made the news for like a day. I don't think anyone died, if I'm not mistaken. But he got his assassin programming tripped. He was blacked out. He actually got saved. He got delivered. I think he even got the gifts of the Holy Spirit. I think he even started speaking in tongues. I'm not sure, but his programming got tripped, and he actually did this bombing on the subway. I think it was a subway or bus or something. This was back in 2017 or 18, so I can't remember exactly the details of it, but he got his programming tripped. And so he did that, and then he freaked out. Like when he found out that was him, he was sent pictures of himself doing it. Someone had, like, his handlers tripped him, and they were like blackmailing him, trying to get him to go join the cult again. But he refused to join the cult. He ended up losing his life. He ended up being killed later on because he wanted to expose what had happened. He wanted to expose alpha and beta programming, but he ended up being killed. So he was an example of somebody that I was friends with that got his programming tripped. And he freaked out when he found out it was him because he didn't even remember doing it because he was tripped. So these are things that happen with false flag terrorism. It's a disgusting group of people. There's proof of all these things. Some of it's going to be really hard to explain on a world level, but there's people in the intelligence community that want to expose as much as they can. False flags. They want to expose the worldwide sex trafficking ring. They want to expose the Illuminati. They want to expose the bestiality sex trafficking ring. They want to expose the pedophilia and the pornography. They want to expose the American government, the Australian government. They want to expose the British government. They want to expose the parts of the Russian government, the Ecuadorian government, the South African government. They want to expose these things. They desire to expose these things, and they're working behind the scenes to expose these things. And the Epstein files is a slow drip. But we're hoping that more and more stuff is going to start coming out because this is what we're dealing with behind the scenes. It's disgusting, and it's very, very real. And it's a lot more in depth than anyone knows. There are thousands upon thousands of famous people involved in this, some of whom are victims, some of whom are abusers, and some of whom used to be victims and they became abusers. There are celebrities that have been involved in terrorist attacks that have helped plan and initiate terrorist attacks. There's politicians who've been involved in planning and initiating terrorist attacks. And not only are they traffickers, but they're actually terrorists. They are people who are actively involved in this. It's disgusting, but it's very, very rampant. So anyhow, I'm going to do another video here in a few minutes, actually, because I feel like I'm going to keep doing some videos a couple more videos. I don't know how many more today, but I'm going to do a couple more videos today because I'm up to it. And I'm trying to do these videos when I'm feeling the strength because I don't want to try to do these videos other times because it's really hard. It's draining, re-traumatizing. But I want to share what I know so that more people can understand and be aware so that they can pray. And so they can also have the knowledge and also prepare themselves for the drops from the Epstein files or the things connected to the Epstein files. I just pray that all of you guys have a great day and God bless you all.